Oh, okay. There's some of you here, early birds. Wonderful, wonderful. We're like 4 minutes early, but let's go ahead and get started. If you're here and you have questions for me about the coaching program, or really about anything, but the coaching program is really the focus of why we're here today. And we've got 60 minutes to have a great conversation. So part of me wishes this was a Zoom and I could see and hear you all, but go ahead and add your questions to the chat. Let me know the Q&A or the chat. This is a much smaller group than we've had on Wednesday nights, and so I am really here to be of service to you, to help you understand what we have available, how we can support you, and please tell me. I know everyone's in very unique situations. And so there can be this question of like, does that work for me? Or where should I start? Or what if I don't have the support for this? Or what if I can't make it to that? Or what if I live in a place where I don't have access to this or that? Please let me know what is coming up for you. Um, from Dana is asking, do we prescribe HRT for elderly female clients? We do. Now, that is a risk benefit scenario and an equation that is different for everyone, Dana. So it really depends on your history and your individual situation. But there's a Finnish trial, a Finnish study, an epidemiological retrospective study on about 500,000 women that showed that initiating estrogen or estrogen plus progesterone reduced your risk of dying from breast cancer if you initiated in your 50s, 60s, or 70s. So you don't, I mean, I think a lot of people think there's this risk of breast cancer if you initiate later. And that is actually doesn't play out in a large epidemiological trial of Western European women. So it might be different depending on your history, whether or not this is appropriate for you. So it really, okay, yeah, if you're familiar with the studies, then it sounds like you don't need me to go into that. From Kathy, I'm curious how and if your coaching model handles people with ApoE. Yeah, great question. So with ApoE, we just go quicker. I don't know if that maybe the question is referring more to the diet and whether or not to do saturated fats. We do recommend for ApoE 4, 3-4 or 4-4 patients that they stay away from animal fats, saturated animal fats, a little bit more than people. There's a little more flexibility because of the difference in lipid metabolism. But the coconut piece, I have not seen that play out clinically, that is a problem. I know Dr. Gundry and Dr. Bredesen refer to that, but Dr. Mary Newport actually suggests that coconut oil, MCT oil, is fine for people with ApoE4, and that is what I have seen as well. We actually see improvements in lipids. So, there is I'm not sure if you're just talking about the saturated fat component and whether or not, how to think through if that's a concern or not, but we certainly are aware of it. And then for ApoE4 folks, we just are kind of more motivated because we know that the risk is higher. I'm sure you saw the so diet and fats, but anything else? I mean, like heart disease and cardiovascular disease, but I don't really think of them at odds, right? When we're treating brain health, we're treating heart health, we're treating whole body health. So that's not really a concern that there's like some big difference that we would in terms of approach that we would take. So hopefully that's helpful. Um, Dr. Marino, it looks like I'm smart working. Could I receive a certificate or email confirming participation? Absolutely. Yes, we do that. Tyler is on my team and she helps with that. So at the end, when we have quizzes, and so at the end of each module, there are quizzes, and then you can get the certificate. If you don't need a certificate, you don't have to take quizzes, but having those quizzes in there helps us to justify giving the certificate. So yeah, that's absolutely available. Does it have to be C8 coconut oil or will any coconut oil work? So Dr. Mary Newport, she likes the Carrington coconut oil. That's one that she likes. The reason why we use, so coconut oil has some MCT in it, and C8, C10, those are both fine. Sometimes you'll get a mixture of the two. The coconut oils, I like those. I prefer them if you tolerate them compared to MCT because coconut oil also has the lauricidin. And so you get some of the antimicrobial benefit for your gums and also in the gut. So we like to use the coconut oil if possible versus just the MCT on its own, but both are good. And so, hi, Kathy. In one of the webinars, I think you said that at Marama, you do keto for 5 days and then enjoy some fruit on the weekends. I thought it can take a few days on keto to get a keto mojo reading for those of us just starting or restarting keto. Should we stay on the diet for a couple of months? Yes, absolutely. Okay, great question, Kathy. So, when to be in ketosis, when to not. Now, my recommendations here. So, I'm going to give you the ideal and then there's reality, right? So when I give you this ideal, do not think I have to do exactly this. I just want to give you a framework for how to get started. So, if you experience any cognitive decline, start with getting into ketosis. It will take 3 days to get into ketosis and just start and go in the direction of reducing your carbohydrates and then increasing your ketone levels. You can do exogenous ketones, you can increase your fats, your MCT, your coconut oil, all of these things. I'm not anti-MCT, but if you're doing one or the other, then I do prefer coconut. But then we go into ketosis, and if you have cognitive decline, the goal is 3 to 6 months of sustained ketosis. At Marama, we have people who have been there for more than 6 months. We have people who have been there for years. And so the goal is not for you to be in ketosis forever, not for anyone to be in ketosis forever. It's about metabolic flexibility and going back and forth. So once you've sustained ketosis for 3 to 6 months, then what do you do next? So I recommend going towards a plant-based diet and adding those seasonal fruits and your more starchy veggies, staying away from any processed carbohydrates, but having carbohydrates that are whole foods, and then reducing probably some of the animal protein. So whether it's butter or cheese or the dairy or the meats, you can back off of those, increase some of the carbohydrates temporarily, because what you want to do is go back and forth between a ketogenic diet and maybe a paleo diet, maybe a Mediterranean diet, maybe a plant-based vegan diet. But you want to go back and forth between these diets so that you're in ketosis some of the time and in glycolysis, burning sugar for fuel some of the time. Now, how do I decide how much time to spend in each? It really depends on your risk factors. So, if you have high risk or you're experiencing cognitive decline, then you definitely want to be in ketosis more often than not. So, what we do at Marama, if somebody's been there 6 months, they've been in ketosis for 6 months, we have them in keto Monday through Thursday. And then Friday evening, Saturday during the day, maybe Sunday morning, they're having strawberries and they're having apple and they're having some seasonal fruits that come from the garden that we have there, or they're maybe having some beets or some carrots, more of those things. So it takes 3 days to get into ketosis when you initially start that process. But once you're keto adapted, it can be 24 hours. So when they start to go back into ketosis Sunday night, Monday morning, they're in ketosis by Monday afternoon, Monday evening. So now they're spending Monday through Thursday in ketosis. That's more of the time than they're not in ketosis, right? So that's the goal. They are suffering with cognitive decline. They're in ketosis more than they're not. Now, for someone else, they might decide, I don't have a private chef like you do at Marama. So I want to be in ketosis weeks 1, 2, and 3 of the month. I want to be in ketosis 3 weeks out of the month, and 1 week out of the month, I won't be, right? That works too. It might be that you spend 2 months in ketosis and then quarterly you take a month off. That's 2 out of 3 months you're spending in ketosis. There is not a perfect science to this. And this, I am not pointing to any science or any research that's saying this is what's best. This is based on my coaching experience, my practical experience, what we see at Marama. This helps to maintain healthy weight. It gets in those phytonutrients from fruits. So if you are an ApoE44, like I'm pretty sure you are, then you want to go through the process of figuring out how to be in ketosis more often than you're not. But you don't want to be there forever. Okay. There's so many great questions. From Judy, my question is about sleep. I have sleep apnea and have been using a CPAP for a year and a half, but I'm still tired sometimes and I fall asleep when I'm on a Zoom. Oh no, that would be rough. Maybe you're not on the most entertaining Zoom. Um, so Judy, what you might want to do, I would recommend going back to sleep medicine. I actually was just on a call with my friend Audrey Wells, and she is a sleep medicine specialist, and she has a whole program on how to make friends with your CPAP. So it might be the fit. It might be that even though you're using the CPAP, it's not doing you as much good as it potentially could. And so it may be the fit. It may be that adding mouth tape or adding something to it or adjusting it in some way will help you get more benefit. So I think that's worth going back and having evaluated. You could start at least with getting a ring or a watch or something that helps you to measure your sleep. And you can see if something else is interfering, if there's a way that you can optimize your sleep in a different way. That would be worth looking into, but while you're waiting to get in to see sleep medicine. Okay, other questions. Do we run our clients through a detox program to pull out toxins and heavy metals? Yeah, so we precision-based medicine is what we do in the clinic at Solsere. So what we do there is we test. We test for heavy metals, we test for molds, we test for chemical toxins. But in the coaching program, we talk generally about detox, so how to optimize detox through our organs of elimination. But because we don't have the specifics on everybody's testing, that's not part of coaching. If you have that, you can of course bring those questions. But because that's not part of the program from a coaching perspective, that's more of the medical side. It's non-specific. It's gentle detox that supports your natural detox system. So hopefully that makes sense. Um, from it looks like a dentist, Dr. Saunders. Are saturated fats always contraindicated on the Rico diet or on my diet? So, no, coconut oil is a saturated fat and it's high in MCT, the medium chain triglycerides, that are a great way to increase your endogenous production. So, MCT oil is the easiest thing for your body to convert into beta hydroxybutyrate, or the ketone that your brain can then burn as fuel. And so, no, saturated fats are not always contraindicated. Saturated fats are encouraged in the form of coconut oil. Now, we definitely, if we're talking about animal products and how they can have saturated fats, we want to avoid grain-fed meat and beef, right? Grain-fed chicken, grain-fed beef, grain-fed anything. Really, those animals are meant to eat grass, and so you're going to have higher levels of omegas when they're grass-fed animals. And then when you have grain-fed animals, it's higher omega-6s, higher saturated fat. And so we definitely want to avoid that. Of course, with any brain healthy diet, you're avoiding fried foods, you're avoiding things like margarine. You can do butter, which has saturated fat in it, and the butyrate in butter is quite good for healing the gut and for other things. So, no, saturated fats are not always contraindicated. There's some nuance there. All right. Oh, I should check these so that we know where we are. Um, all right. Keep these questions coming, because I am here to answer them. Okay. So what is the cost of the coaching program? So the coaching program, Sunshine, thank you for asking. Let me bring this up and show you. So the cost of the coaching program, because you are here today, is $1997. So $1,997 because you are here today. And let me bring you to show you all of what's included and what it looks like. So when you join today, you get the discounted price of $19.97. And Tyler is putting the link in the chat as well so that everyone can get access to that. And you also get a copy of the book that's coming out. You'll be one of the first people to get the book. If you've already bought one, thank you. You'll get another one. And I can send you a signed copy with a personalized note in there if you are in our coaching class. And you'll instantly get access to the Reversing Alzheimer's Workbook, which I can share with you a little bit of what that looks like today. If you go to startreversingalzheimers.com, Tyler's put that in the chat and you can learn more about it there, but you'll get 12 live coaching sessions with me. It says 60 minutes here just because sometimes Tyler and I have to run after 60 minutes or we have something right after, but generally we spend 90 minutes talking through all of the questions. In some of these bigger groups, when there's hundreds of people, we have 600 people more sometimes come every Wednesday night when we do these bigger webinars. And we don't get to all the questions. There's just no way that we could. I would be there all day and all night. But in these smaller groups, we max it out at 25 people. And so we get to every single question. And we start with the questions. This is your time to ask me what's meaningful and important to you. So we start with your questions. We go through the content, but you have access to this content through the book, through the workbook, through videos. So you have access to the content anytime. You don't have to wait for me, but you can come and ask me all the questions. And then I review the content because there's nuance and there's depth. And every time we hear it repeated, we get a little bit more out of it. Even me, like I learned so much. And then you learn from each other during these calls. So we hear over and over again, I didn't have that question. I didn't know I had that question, but he asked a question that gave me so much insight when I heard the answer, or when even just hearing the question, I realized that I wasn't doing that right, or I wasn't getting the maximum benefit out of that. So Tyler and I are there with you. Occasionally I have travel or something comes up or there's a holiday, and then we just add it on at the end. So if it's not, Mondays is when we're going to start this on Monday, the 20th, which is next Monday. And if there's a holiday that pops up, then we just tack it on at the end. So it's very flexible. If you miss one, you're welcome to make it up in another session in the future too. And then, so you'll get the video summaries, you'll get the workbook, you'll get the book itself, and you'll get instant access to the 11 module caregiver training course. This is the original one that we created. So that is there, especially for caregivers. This is particularly important and helpful. And then you get access to the private Facebook group, which is always fun to see people asking questions in there, sharing recipes. There's just a wonderful community here of people who are dedicated to helping their loved ones reverse dementia using Dr. Bredeson's work. And so instead of feeling like you have to fight someone and convince them that it can work, you're surrounded by people who get it, and that is and who are encouraging, and who might be further ahead and who have seen successes. And so there's a lot of encouragement to keep going and to double down and to just prioritize health a little bit more. And here's lovely Tyler. So you get a one-on-one kickoff call with Tyler. We started this conversation, and every family has a unique situation. We just heard from a family this week who unexpectedly lost their daughter-in-law. And instead of being able to focus on grandma, the wife, who's just struggling with dementia, they've had to just shift everything to taking care of the grandkids who lost their mom so unexpectedly. And so though, this was such a dramatic incident, but it just hit me. It crushed me so much to hear that had happened to them. They emailed and said, "We're so sorry. We can't move forward with seeing you in the clinic because of this." Or it was in Kansas. "We can't move forward with moving her into the Clear Mind Center. But we hope that we'll be able to revisit this in the future." And I was like, oh my God, like just, her down and take care of your family. There's so many dynamics, is my point here. And that's part of what Tyler helps everyone to sift through and decide what makes sense for me and my family, what makes sense for me and my loved one. How do we get the maximum benefit out of this? And in our email exchange with that family, that's of course what we said, like, even though you're not going to be able to move her in, let us know how we can support you where you are. This is an insanely stressful time. Let us support you in whatever way works. And that's a big part of this Reversing Alzheimer's at Home course. Is we make it accessible, we make it doable where you are. So you don't have to uproot your life and move in. You can get the benefits at home. And it also, of course, it's less expensive. The community is really where so much of the value comes. We get to create this container. Tyler and I get to create this safe space where we can have really hard conversations about what works and what doesn't work, and what's happening and how challenging it can be and how hopeful it can be, and celebrate the successes together. And it's that community, that it's the other people who show up in it that really, really, really add value. And you add value. When you show up, you add a ton of value. And we are so grateful when you engage, ask questions. The questions are so valuable. The answers, I hope, are valuable. But the answers that come from your peer group, from the other people living it, are so incredibly helpful. And we learn from them, we pass that on, and you get the benefit of that. So you get the course, you get the coaching with me, you get the book, you get the workbook. And I'm so proud of the workbook. I'll share it with you guys right now. I'll give you a little insight into that. You get the private Facebook group, and you get to talk with Tyler one-on-one. And all of that right now is only $19.97. So sign up. In the future, the price does go up. And with the book coming out, I'm reevaluating exactly what I'll be able to do in the future. So I don't know what that'll look like. Um, Deep breath. But what happens once you join us is you get to log in. You'll get an email that'll take you to this login page. You'll get to reset your password. And then once you're on the other end, you will see that there is this Morad Home is what we used to call it. And our branding is slowly changing. So bear with us. Don't get too confused there. We are switching it to the Reversing Alzheimer's at Home Caregiver Training course, or the course, because it's not just for caregivers. This is for prevention and optimization as well. We get a bunch of people from all parts of the spectrum, and we love it when other care providers. I saw there's a dentist here. Thank you for joining us. You can make such a big impact. Nurses will join us. Home health and aides will join us. And for me, this is so fulfilling because it's the ripple effect of this work. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys can help so many more people than I can alone. So the coaching and Q&As for 12 weeks on Zoom, startreversingalzheimers.com is where to find that. And I will go back to answering more questions, but hopefully that gives you kind of like a big picture. What is the coaching program? That's what it is. Oh, from Dr. Saunders. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, but butter is a no-no. Grass-fed butter is not a no-no. Grass-fed butter can be really great. We're fans. It can be gut healing. It's highly nutritive. It doesn't have lactose. That doesn't have the same amount of lactose as other things. Now, if you are sensitive to dairy, of course, then don't do butter, don't do dairy. But butter itself is not particularly bad for you. It's better than the margarines and the oleo, and those are the trans fats that are particularly terrible. So Randall, any benefit from taking Perfect Keto brand exogenous ketones? Yes, we love those. That helps to increase your ketone levels, and certainly it helps us to get into that goal of ketosis and get the energy to the brain, that fuel source, those ketone fuel source. If you can't commit entirely to getting into ketosis by really reducing your carbohydrates, then an alternative way to go in that direction is to add the ketone powders or the ketone capsules. Those, we call them exogenous ketones. From Terry Lee, I would like to know about the saunas you use. Do you have a preference of any brand? I'm a huge fan of Sunlighten. They make some great they've really been thoughtful about how they've put together their saunas. And they have one that you can kind of put on the floor or on a massage table or something, and you can pull it over you. So it's just a capsule kind of thing instead of getting into a big sauna. So they have different price levels. They have different aesthetics, but they've done a really great job. A few of my friends have the Sunlighten saunas and they love them. I'm a huge fan. From Barbara, 12-week online video sessions. Is this one a week for 12 weeks? Yes. And it's Monday at 3 p.m. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, please. Monday at 3 p.m., I believe 3 to 4:30 Pacific time on Mondays. And the private coaching is additional. And so, yeah, I know there's a Mondays, 3 p.m. Pacific. We are confirmed. Thank you, Tyler. And so, Barbara, there's a discount that's available because you're here. You get access to the discount. So, if you have additional questions, maybe we should get you on the phone with Tyler just so you're clear about how much coaching is provided at what tier. If you want more coaching, you just pay for it, and that's awesome. We're happy to get you that individualized coaching. So I think, Barbara, it would be good for you and Tyler. Tyler has just put her email in the chat. So I think if you guys link up, she can ask all of your individual questions. But yes, it is And here, what we can also do is we can go to startreversingalzheimers.com. Although I think that that isn't the discounted pricing that's on there. So Tyler is the expert on how to get you access to that discounted pricing. From Kathy, I have an old Keto Mojo and I'll get new batteries and testing strips. Is it still true that there are no breathalyzers or urine strips that really work? Great question. So the urine strips, they tell you on like a gradient. So it'll be like light purple if you're in mild ketosis, and then the purple will get darker and darker and darker as you're in higher levels of ketosis, but it doesn't give you a number. So you have this sort of approximation. And after about a month in ketosis, it doesn't work anymore. It won't pick it up. You won't have as many ketones in your urine. So the urine strips, they work, but they're not going to work as well as the Keto Mojo. Now, the breathalyzers, they are expensive. So the BioSense is the one that Dr. Bredesen likes. And I was on a call with him and the group at Pacific Neuroscience Institute last night, and he was talking about liking the BioSense. Our experience has been that we haven't been able to get it to work. And it's like, I don't know, $300 or $400. And he even made the comment, he's like, they tend to wear out after about a year. And you need to use the Keto Mojo to calibrate it anyways. I'm a fan of doing the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, and then getting a sense with the Keto Mojo, when my blood sugar does this, my ketones do that. So we know that when ketones are up, blood sugar tends to be down. And when blood sugar is up, ketones tend to be down. So what I've done personally is wear the continuous glucose monitor on my arm without having to prick myself, be able to use my phone to understand where my ketone level, or excuse me, not my ketone levels, but my blood sugar levels are, and then use the Keto Mojo less frequently to know what the relationship between blood sugar and ketones are. So that might be a helpful way to get away from pricking yourself. One good thing about the ketone strips is that they have come down significantly in cost. They used to be between $1 and $2. Sometimes you had to get them shipped from Australia to get the $1. So then now you're paying a bunch for shipping. Now you can get the ketone strips for Keto Mojo easily online for, I think, less than 50 cents a piece. So from Karen, if you have one copy of the gene but do not have any blood testing, would you start with pre-code or recode, or would that be determined after testing? Great question. So pre-code and recode in my mind are whether or not you have any cognitive decline. So pre-code is if you're trying to prevent cognitive decline, and recode is if you are trying to reverse cognitive decline. So it's more about the goal cognitively. And both of them, if you're signing up with Apollo, they come with some blood testing, I think, depending on which package you get. From Sunshine, what can someone use for kidney stones? So Sunshine, really important to know what type of kidney stones you have. Most kidney stones are calcium oxalate. And if that's the case, you want to identify if maybe your diet is contributing to that. So spinach, almonds, and chia seeds are very high in oxalates. And if you've noticed that your diet has gone up in those, maybe back off of them. You don't have to eliminate them, but mix up your greens, mix up your nuts, maybe back off the chia seeds, more hemp hearts, more flax seeds, maybe. Go choose alternatives that have lower levels of oxalates. Another thing with kidney stones is maybe evaluate parathyroid function. This is really something you want to talk to a provider about, particularly if you're getting recurrent kidney stones. This can indicate issues with calcium dysregulation. So we want to make sure that that's evaluated. You really want to be working with a provider for kidney stones. Those can be terribly painful. And so I'm sorry if you're going through that right now. The CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, I've seen on Amazon requires a prescription. Is there a brand that we can just buy? Yeah, that is in the works. So the Dexcom 7 is the one that I recommend. And if you ask your provider, they should be willing to prescribe it for you. It will be over the counter, but I don't know what the timeline is on that. It's getting rebranded, but it's the Dexcom version that will be available over the counter soon-ish. If you ask your provider for the prescription, usually they come in a pack of 3, and I always send it to Costco, that prescription to Costco, and then you can use the GoodRx coupon, and you can get them for about $63 per CGM, which lasts about 10 days. That one lasts 10 days. So they're much less expensive than they used to be. We used to pay $400 for two of them. So we'd be paying $200 for what's now available for $63. But yes, at this moment, Karen, it does require a prescription. So I know that that's kind of a headache because then you've got to go in and pay for the visit. But that is available if you can see a provider for it. All right, so we'll keep going here. I see that there's some stuff coming up in the chat. Great. Thank you, Tyler, for putting all those links in there. Oh, how wonderful to have. We have so many providers here. Thank you for joining us. From Anne, we did end up starting a little bit. We started just 2 minutes before you arrived, and I just launched in. This is a Q&A, so add your questions. If I repeat myself, I'm totally fine doing that. If you arrived a little bit late, I jumped on at 2:56 after frantically or it must have been 11:56 my time. I frantically was texting Tyler right before this. Where's the link? I don't know where the link is, but I found it. Thank you. Okay. And it looks like there's some questions for Tyler in here. She is the expert at big pieces of this. From Lori, do you think for someone at the MCI stage that the program would be as beneficial as later on in the process? Of course, not everyone continues to decline further. So, Lori, I strongly recommend start as fast as possible if there is mild cognitive impairment. The case that we reviewed last night with Dr. Bredesen was this gentleman who met Dr. Bredesen in 2013 before he had even published any papers about reversing cognitive decline. They were putting the paper together, and this was a provider, another person in their network who approached Dr. Bredesen and said he was willing to do anything. So he did parts of it and he got way better. Well, fast forward 10 years and he's declined because he's only kind of been on and off and on and off, and this brilliant guy. And it was this really wonderful story, except for that he didn't do it. And he had this opportunity to do it early on in the process. He continued working, and when he would do it and it would work, and then he'd kind of fall off the wagon and eat ice cream, and then it would stop working and his cognition would decline. Not everyone continues to decline further. I guess, Lori, the expectation is that most people do. Now, I'm sure that not everyone does, but do you need to do anything? That's something that you'll have to decide. But what I see is that people who take massive action, who do the work that it takes to optimize cellular function, they do better. They're able to reverse the disease process. And the earlier you start, the higher my confidence is. The younger you are, the easier it is to repair. And that what's scary is when people decline further into those single-digit MoCA scores. When their MoCA scores get lower, we have less confidence. There are structural changes in the brain that happen. The amyloid plaques build up. It is much harder to reverse this process and to get the benefits. We might be able to reverse the disease process, but if the structural changes that have already happened, then we need a much bigger miracle. When it's a biochemical process, when it's earlier on in the disease state, we have much, much higher confidence. So, I guess you could take the gamble and not do anything and see if you don't decline, but you have the option. You have the option to take a little bit more control. How influential is ApoE4 status with dementia outcomes? So the ApoE4 status, there was actually a Nature paper that got a lot of press that came out just, I think, a week ago or so. And ApoE4, they are now identifying as a cause of dementia. And they had these crazy wild statistics of 75% of people over 65 with ApoE44 have enough amyloid to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now, not all of them have the cognitive function decline to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but there's significantly more amyloid plaque in that population than in people without any ApoE4 positive. So if they're 2-3 or 2-3-3. But if you're 3-4, of course, the risk is elevated. And then 4-4, the risk is significantly elevated to over 50% of people who are 4-4 end up with dementia. Now, in our clinical trial, we had 3 people with ApoE 4 in the group. The 2 of them who were younger, who were in their one was, I think, 49, and the other was in her 53, 54. They both did phenomenally well and fully regained all of their cognitive function. The woman who was in her 70s did not. She did not get better. She was 4 positive, and she actually has there's 12 siblings, and 3 of them entered the trial with us. So and 2 of them ended up withdrawing because their husbands weren't fully on board and they had to travel quite far. So the one who was more local and had the support of her younger sister, she stayed in the trial. And as hard as we tried, she did not improve. Now, did it slow the rate of decline? That wasn't the question that we asked in the trial. So we don't know. But we did try everything. And someone older who had further progressed disease with ApoE 4, it's harder. It is harder, and I don't have as much confidence. So the goal with if you know your ApoE status and you are 3, 4, or 4, start today. Do not wait. You want to prevent and delay for as long as possible. And if you delay, like let's just say worst case scenario, if you're 4 positive and you're destined to get to get Alzheimer's at some point, delay. Make it happen 10 years later or 15 years later or 20 years later. Let's push that out so that you have more health span, more brain span, so that you have more time where you're engaged with your grandkids and your children and doing the work you love, right? If ApoE 4 status is extremely influential in dementia outcomes, and I just have anecdotal kind of information about what that looked like in our research. They're not huge numbers. I will say I think we had 7 participants with 3, 4, and they tend to do really well. So definitely worth engaging and getting right, all this information. It only works if we put it into practice, right? So do what you need to do, and that's why we offer the coaching, right? We can read the book, you can read my book, you can read Dr. Bredeson's book, and for a lot of people that's enough, and they can put those insights and that information into action. And for other people, it's harder. And so do what you need to do, get the help, get the coaching, do what you need to do to make this information actionable and get the benefit. Um, all right, from Dana, are you familiar with the HOPE study and the device they're using? I am not. We'd love a link. Please tell us more. How is one able to obtain testing for MoCA scores? Great question, Lee. So the best thing to do if you want a MoCA score, a Montreal Cognitive Assessment, that is available typically through your providers. Now, they might say that I have a SLUMS test, which is the St. Louis test. I'm blanking on what that stands for, the acronym stands for, but we can look it up. Or also the Many Mental Status, the MMSE. These are all 30-point. Basically, they're worksheets that are out of 30 points, and they're a way for providers to connect and tell each other, kind of give a sense of where someone is on that spectrum of cognitive decline, where a shared patient might be. Also, the CNS Vital Signs is available through Apollo, and that's a way to do an online test. There are some other online cognitive tests. A lot of times people will go through like a 4-hour psych testing, neuropsych testing. It's kind of stressful. It's very stressful for most people. And then there's this big write-up, but there's not a score. And so it's nice when we have a number. It's an approximate, right? Some people who have, if they're blind or if they can't hear, right, or if they're going in the they can't see as well, or they can't hear as well, they're going to do poorly on the MoCA score. And so there's constraints to all of the testing. Having a few different type of tests can be helpful. And then the ASL, the brain MRIs can also be helpful for understanding where you might be on that spectrum. There's a lot of different things to do, but don't get overwhelmed. A MoCA score is a simple, easy one, and that's why we kind of turn to it. From Ed, I'm trying to decide if I should request a refund that I joined before I had a practitioner. Oh, okay, who can provide a health coach? As much as I can learn from the group, if I could manage to attend, I wonder if my connection with the practitioner would be better with an employer of the practitioner. Oh, an employee probably. Also, given my cancer chaos, maybe one coach is better than both. Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. And It looks like you and Dana are, or excuse me, you and Tyler are going to jump on a phone call together. So let's talk through that. So the value of the group is that you often are getting the benefit of everybody else who's there, right? One-on-one coaching is wonderful for optimizing to make it really work for your unique situation, but it doesn't give you those insights of everybody else and those questions that come up that you didn't realize you had, right? You've got to go into that one-on-one meeting really knowing what you want to get out of it and what your questions are. And you don't get that sort of reflection of what you don't know sometimes. Sometimes you do. But it's a great question and you'll have to decide like what works best for you. We're here to be of service and we love the group coaching. It's also more affordable than the one-on-one coaching often. But that you have, when you're working with a practitioner, if they have an agenda and they want to, make sure that you're getting the support from their health coach who's very much aligned with them, then I can understand that too. Um, all right. So I'm just kind of going back and forth between the Q&A. From Ron, getting aerobic, but his heart rate is always 90% and can't get him to move faster. HIIT might help him. How long do you do that? Okay, so I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Always at 90% of maybe max heart rate, and you don't want him to move faster. So if he's at 90% of maximum heart rate, I think that he is probably moving plenty quick. And the HIIT might help. So what you want to aim for with exercise is 200 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous exercise. So if you're at 90% of maximum heart rate, I'm not really sure how to interpret the question, but maybe you can give me some clarifying information there or re-ask the question, Ron, and I will try to give you a better answer. From Catherine, the sauna that I recommend is called Sunlighten. And they have a few different options. From Randall, hello again. My 80-year-old wife recently tested off the charts for lead, also high for barium, cadmium, and tin. For lead, other than lead pipes and lead paint, have any of your clients identified other sources for lead? Yeah, typically it's the paint, not always. Cadmium is in cacao. Cadmium is in cigarette smoke. Tin can be in parchment paper, tin cans, but usually it's aluminum cans that we use these days. And then the lead, often the paint, it's not that we imagine people are like chewing on the wall, but more that in the old homes that had lead paint, in before 1977, I think it was taken out of the paint, but it's when the doors and windows open and close and it rubs, especially in those old houses where like they get the wood swells when it rains. And then we open and close the windows and it rubs, and then that puts that lead particulate in the air. It then falls into the dust, and then we can absorb it. So it comes from a bunch of different places. Lead also, I see that Lee added dishes. So there's lead in especially in the red glazes that go into ceramics. So if you're getting dishes from Mexico or China, it can be in the glazes. Dana is mentioning cosmetics. Yeah, in the blush, in the lipstick. So our cosmetics, we recommend Ilia or Beauty Counter. There's some non-toxic. We talk through quite a bit of that in the coaching courses. How to identify if there are chemical toxins in your makeups or personal care products. So those are, yeah, and please, I love it that there people are adding to the chat. Please, like add more. What are other ideas? This is part of the beauty of the group. Like you're illustrating it here for me right now. Is that, Dana is mentioning cosmetics and Lee is mentioning vases and dishes. And, I speak from the top of my head and we go back to some of the research, but Mon is mentioning aluminum, barium is being sprayed in chemtrails. It's everywhere. It's in the soil and in the plants. And certainly lead has always been in the soil, right? This is part of Prop 68 in California. If you go into a grocery store, on the window in the grocery store, it says, beware, anything in the produce department, anything that came out of the ground is going to have some lead in it. So it's just a matter of how much and can our body get rid of it. And then what do we do for it? So Dana has Yuka as a great app to evaluate the toxin levels. We also like EWG, the Environmental Working Group's not a healthy living app. They put together the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list, and they do a great job. But Dana, I've never heard of Yuka, and thank you for turning us on to that, as well as the Hope Study. From Miriam, I've been told by two practitioners, not at all connected to concern about cognition, that ketosis would be bad for me. The naturopath had me take an oat test, which showed in his words that I was near starvation. I had been avoiding carbs because I'm pre diabetic, but his reaction was shocking. The other practitioner, an MD treating me for low bone mass, said no to a ketogenic diet for the same reason that I would lose muscle mass, become weaker, and I am already slim except for the belly. 84 years old, not strong, but not especially weak, and I walk frequently. So Miriam, this is a great question, and this is something we end up discussing a ton in the coaching program. Is what do we do if we're concerned about weight loss? If we're concerned about nutrient absorption and depletion? So this is really nuanced, but how I think through it is if you are not digesting and absorbing what's going on in the gut. I hope that there was maybe a stool test, because if you're choosing great high nutrient dense foods, because keto is not low calorie, right? It's high calorie, nutrient dense. And it's not for everyone also. I'm a fan of ketosis, but it's not necessarily for absolutely everyone. So that might be the case in your individual scenario. But if you are losing muscle mass, that's not about carbs, right? Like muscle mass is, are you getting enough protein? Certainly. Do you have the amino acids to make that? And then are you getting strength training? So if you're walking, you might want to start carrying weights, or you might want to start doing some yoga or some sort of strength training, bands, or working with a personal trainer or even a physical therapist, so that you can build muscle mass. You might want to consider some bioidentical hormone replacement so that you can help build muscle mass using some DHEA or some testosterone. That might make sense for you even at 84. And if you are near starvation, then what you want to do is increase nutrients. Now, if finding out, what you're eating, are you digesting, are you absorbing, considering maybe IVs temporarily, but how do we get your nutrients up? Going back and forth in and out of ketosis will not cause you to starve. We're high nutrient dense diet is what we're looking for. This should actually feed you. And then if you're avoiding carbs because you're pre-diabetic, that makes sense to me. It sounds like there's a different issue that's causing this near starvation sort of assessment. And then if you are slim, we need to make sure that you're on a ketogenic diet that helps you to build muscle mass. So a couple things to think about. But certainly I think that there's a good nuanced conversation to have there. Okay, so Ron is clarifying 90 beats per minute. And this would be good to have in sort of in real time. Ron, this is a great question for our coaching program, where I have all of you on Zoom and you can jump in and you can clarify everything for me, because I still have so many questions about how to get you a good answer. Okay, so from an anonymous attendee, I am an ApoE 3/4, I think, and have large amounts of plaque, and I'm 76 years old. I still have mental acuity. That is fantastic. And I'm entered in the AHEAD study through the University of California, Irvine. One of the big problems with Leqembi, which is the drug in the study, is that if you have the ApoE4 gene, you are more susceptible to the brain bleeds and brain swelling. Actually, 20% of those with ApoE4 participants have the issue. I think that 30% of participants, I thought, in the Leqembi trial, regardless of ApoE status, had swelling and bleeding. Do I think it's worth the risk to continue in the study? You'll have to decide about that. That's not a decision I can, make for you. But my understanding was that women did not do as well with Leqembi. Men seemed to do better, and that ApoE4 participants did not do as well. So those are from the earlier studies. You are obviously in a current study where they're learning more. I will just say thank you for participating in a trial, because everyone who participates in a trial and does the work of showing up and doing it and putting their body at at risk potentially for the science, we all learn from that. And it helps everyone who comes behind you that is ApoE3/4 positive. Your data supports all of us in terms of the learning. And so thank you, thank you, thank you for being willing to sign up and at least get the initial data in there. From Amy, my father passed away from Alzheimer's disease, and it inspired me to go into functional medicine, health coaching. I've seen your name, and I'm so happy that you're here to get to the root cause of chronic disease, especially Alzheimer's. I work at a clinic now, and I had access to testing and found out that I am ApoE4, or hopefully you're 3/4, um, and decided to run genetic testing on my kiddos who are 17 and 14. One's 3/4, one's 3/3. I'm primarily oh, so you must be 3/4 if one of them is 3/3. I'm primarily gluten-free and dairy-free, but my kids scoff at my efforts and do the best to do the best for my health. How do you suggest we talk with kids about their risk factors now and how best for them to eat now and later in life? Great question. Yeah, so I think that with teenagers, since I have a couple that are close to me in my life, the best you can do is modeling, right? And then as they get into their 20s and 30s, I think perspectives change, right? Teenagers, it's hard. They're going to do what they want to do at this point. And so model good behavior for yourself, right? Get the exercise, eat well. I think that we run the risk of them. Teenagers by nature are going to be, they are going to be defiant, and they're going to want to, this is part of their development, right? Is that they want to rebel. And so I think the tighter we want to control, the worse outcomes we sometimes get. But if you do the grocery shopping, make healthy brain foods available, right? And I appreciate the conundrum you're in. I think we don't want to create fear. By the time that they're old enough, we should have great solutions for Alzheimer's. We already have really great solutions for Alzheimer's and certainly for the prevention. I think that by the time your 17 and 14-year-olds have gotten to a place where this is really high risk for them. Now, that doesn't mean that they can go off the rails and eat a standard American diet, but I think that if you model good, healthy lifestyle behaviors, they're going to be in really good shape. They're lucky that you're their mom and that you're aware of this, but also the science is progressing. We're going to know more. And so I don't want you to be panicked about their health. From Kathy, I love coffee and always get organic and fair trade. How important is it to get Purity brand for no mold? I'm a huge fan of Purity coffee. I don't drink coffee. I eat matcha, or I practically, I drink matcha. I drink lots of matcha. I love it. So my my opinions about coffee are very much from the perspective that, like, do the best you can. I know it gets super expensive. I do love Purity. I think that it's not just mold that they're cognizant of, but they're actually getting the phenotypes of coffee from really great places that are better for health generally. And so I'm a fan of Purity, but if it's not always accessible, then don't worry about it. But Kathy, I have a bunch of Purity coffee in my pantry, and I don't drink coffee, so I'm happy to give it to you. Have you seen further decline when someone is on a statin? My mom is much worse than a year ago, and she's been on a statin during this time. She's also on 2 Alzheimer's medications from her primary as she waits to get into a specialist. So Karen, great question. Statins. This is kind of where primary care providers go when they see high cholesterol, and there are concerns. So first of all, if somebody's on a statin, add CoQ10. That's like baseline out of the gate. Like, just make sure that CoQ10 is there, because CoQ10 is essential to mitochondrial function. And when we are on a statin, whether it's red yeast rice, which is, or sometimes you'll hear it called red yeast rice or red rice yeast. They'll interchange how the order of those words, but that is an HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor. It is a statin, even though it comes in a supplement bottle over the counter. It is a statin, and it is less well regulated than a statin that you would get from your pharmacist. So just get on a statin if you're going to take red yeast rice. Both of them, red yeast rice and statins like Crestor or any of the ones that you'd get from your pharmacist, Lipitor, all of those, they are HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors. That is their mechanism of action, and they reduce the ability for your body to make CoQ10, which you can supplement with. So to mitigate the potential impact of statins, take CoQ10. Now, what are your options outside of statins? Depending on where your lipid levels are, and if you're a hyperabsorber or what's going on, if even your ApoE4 status can come into play in this conversation, you do potentially have other options. Now, if your total cholesterol level is up over 400 and your Lp(a) is high and your SDLDL is high and all of these things are really high and you're at very high risk and you have strong family history, we need to be more aggressive, and that might include a low-dose statin. But we can also use something called Zetia, which helps to prevent absorption of cholesterol. We can use cholestyramine, which is a binder that helps to remove mold toxins, but also can bind cholesterol in the bile so that you excrete more through your stool. You excrete more cholesterol. You don't have as much being reabsorbed. So there's 3 different types of cholesterol medications that you can use. Zetia to prevent absorption, statins to break it down in the liver, and then the cholestyramine, which binds it in the stool, in the bile. So, there's different types, and a lot of the studies have been on Zetia, the absorption medication, plus the statins, but we have patients who use the absorption medication and don't need to use the statins. We get their cholesterol numbers into that goal range. The other thing to consider is the herbs. So bergamot and amla, we use a product called Burgacore Plus. That's something that could potentially be tried. Now, this takes effort. It takes some trial and error. We have to be diligent about going back and testing. The goal is to reduce risk of vascular dementia and of the cardiovascular risk, the concern about myocardial infarction or strokes or any of these things, right? So we want a heart attack, MI or heart attack. But anyways, what we want to do is reduce the risk, and testing, looking at that, understanding the different nuances there are worthwhile. And you would want to do that with a provider, but there's a lot of different options to go and discuss with the provider. So from Ron, okay, he's supposed to get to 100 to 120 to be at 85, probably 85% of maximum heart rate. How long is the hit at maximum workout? 1 to 2 minutes. He settles in at 90 beats per minute and lucky to get 45 minutes at 110. Okay, so you guys are doing a phenomenal job. Aim for 200 minutes a week. So if you're doing 45 minutes, do that 6 times a week. And you should get, give or take 5 or 6 times a week at 45 minutes will get you close to 200 minutes per week. And actually, I think you could do 4 to 5, 5 to 6. Yeah, somewhere in there. Do the math. But anyways, if you're getting 45 minutes a day, you're doing great. You're doing great. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then what about binders? That seems to make him constipated. Can't beat this binder business affecting him in this way. Okay, so magnesiums can help with that, reducing the dose of the binders. Of course, adding bulking agents can help. Vitamin C can help. So there's lots of different ways to mitigate the constipation, tons and tons and tons of water. But there's different strategies for that, and they're very low risk. But having him if he's on binders, it means there's toxicity, so he needs to have a bowel movement every day. From Tanya, sorry, work call went late. No worries, no worries. You're welcome to ask questions twice. This time is for you. How useful is the coaching program for a caretaker who's caring for mid-stage Alzheimer's, not early, and a spouse with early onset, young onset, great, thanks for clarifying, Alzheimer's that's been progressing rapidly? I've read the Bredesen books, have ordered your book, thank you, and have been doing what I can for him. He's not very compliant with diet or activity or exercise changes. So Tanya, gosh, this course was designed with exactly you in mind. Someone who's caring for multiple people with dementia. I think having the community is so, so important. It helps in those really hard days to come back to the group and be like, oh, I've had a rough week. And then to have somebody celebrate with you when someone's doing better. And then to just stick with it, to have the motivation to keep trying and to try different, the compliance, like, is there something we can shift about how you communicate? There's ideas in the group about what's worked, what hasn't, different language. So my hope is that it would be particularly valuable for someone in your position. From Randy, Dr. Berg says that kimchi should have Lactobacillus secchi to help with the Q-tips and the nose. Yes, that is um, the particular bug that is best for the sinuses, and most kimchi has that. But you can absolutely double check. What I wouldn't do is order the super expensive pills that you swallow. Just use the kimchi. From Karen, don't know when I went through menopause due to having uterus removed at 40. I use progesterone cream and have for about 11 years. I'm 63. When is it too late to start hormones? The best way to find a doctor who will balance hormones. So Bredesen trained providers are trained to balance hormones. So you can look for someone who's Bredesen trained. You can look for a naturopath. You can look for, there's the Menopausal Society, and they have great doctors, and working with someone who's been trained specifically with bioidenticals. Also, A4M, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, and IFM, Institute for Functional Medicine, they also train doctors to understand and test and dose bioidentical hormones. Why do the new meals offer sweet potatoes and rice-looking grains? I'm not sure which meals that is. Maybe Nutrition for Longevity. I'm not 100% sure which meals you're referring to, Ron. Karen, I just read about this study that said with the two genes, they actually got worse on Leqembi. Yeah, 4-4 is worse on Leqembi. It doesn't work for them. That is what we see. From Dr. Sanpal, please list those 3 that you just mentioned. Tell me what 3, because I don't know what context that was in. Kathy will get you the purity coffee. Had my husband contact Tyler. Great, Barbara. Can't wait to see you. We'll make sure that you get the discount. All good. Yeah, don't worry, Barbara. We're here to take care of you. We will get you on the phone. We've got 3 minutes left, and after that, you and Tyler can connect. Tyler has lots on her plate, so I'll let her tell you when you guys can connect. All right, so I'm going back over to the chat. Thank you all for all of your engagement. What are my thoughts about PPIs? I'm seeing this. This is a quick one. So my thoughts about PPIs. There's a time and a place. And if you have severe heartburn, if you have an ulcer, if you are, I took a patient off of PPIs and she had a bleed and ended up in the hospital, and it was terrifying. And I will never take that lightly again. But PPIs, there's a time and place, and they're really not designed for more than 2 or 3 weeks. And then we want to figure out if you're having heartburn, why? And as we age, we create fewer digestive enzymes. It's harder to digest and absorb food, and we need those nutrients more than ever as we age. So PPIs prevent us from digesting because they reduce the acid in our stomach. They actually can put us at risk for more reflux because acid is what helps to close the lower esophageal sphincter. They can put us at risk for parasites and other infections getting in through the gut because we don't have that acid, which is part of our immune system. It's a blunt instrument, but that acid in our stomach helps to kill things so that it doesn't wreak havoc later on down our digestive tract. So those are my thoughts on PPIs. There's a time and a place for them, but in an ideal world, what we do is we optimize your digestion so that you don't have heartburn, so that you don't need them, so that you can digest and absorb and assimilate your food. All right, I have to wrap up because I've got another call at the top of the hour. There are so many wonderful questions in here, and thank you all for coming. It's so nice to have you here. And part of the benefit of getting in the coaching program is that we get to all the questions. So I know there's a lot that are pending, and I'm sorry I couldn't get to them all, but that is why we offer the coaching program, is so that you can get your questions answered. You can get them in the Facebook group. You can get them from each other. You can get my insights. We can have really deep conversations that are nuanced, that make sure that you get the right answers for you, so that you can put this great information that Dr. Bredesen has made available, that all of the things that we've learned over the years, so that you can put these things into action and get the benefits. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you here, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the coaching program. Take care, everyone.